Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
Chiefs win. Cry, Eagles, cry.
Great, excited to be back early.
You know, every day I got the Three Stooges in the studio with me is a good fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
So let's make sure he gets that bag.
F-R-A-U-D-S, fries! Woo!
Justin's way ahead in picks. That's all that you need to fucking know.
Show's over.
Show's over. We're going home. I would like to welcome you back to another page of the Playbook Sports Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Playbook Sports Podcast. 32 NFL offseasons in 32 days. Yesterday, day 12, we did the Green Bay Packers. Today, we are jumping in to the Houston Texans, and I would like to start the Texans offseason review by talking about a man that is no longer associated with the Houston Texans. That is legendary, hard-nipped, gray-bearded Lovie Smith. For a period of time, he had to have been the most hated man in Houston. I mean, in a meaningless game, Week 18 against the Colts, with the number one overall pick genuinely on the line, he chose to go for two to win the game with less than a minute left and completely screw the franchise out of the first overall pick. Now, is that in a few years are we going to look back and be like, oh man, thank goodness they got C.J. Stroud and not Bryce Young? Or is Bryce Young going to be on a Hall of Fame trajectory and we're going to be like, man, he was so close to being a Houston Texan? Who knows? But you know what I know is that as a fan of chaos, I love that Lovie Smith did that. Well done, Lovie. You knew you were being fired. You knew your leash was short, and you said, you know what? I'm going out middle fingers high, and I love it. But enough about Lovie Smith. Let's look at the Texans offseason, which has obviously been full of change. Let's just go ahead and start at the top. DeMeco Ryans hired as the head coach, formerly the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. Honestly, guys, he had that defensive unit absolutely killing it all season. There's a reason why teams that played the Niners lost the next week. I know it's just such a weird stat, but go back and look at it. If you played the 49ers, your next game, you lost. Every single week, playoffs included. That's crazy. I don't know if that means anything, but it's just a fun stat. I mean, he was the first defensive coordinator to figure out the Miami Dolphins offense and to give a blueprint on how to maybe slow us down, and it worked effectively, dick. I mean, he was a key reason that they went to the NFC Championship game with Brock Purdy at quarterback, and no knock on Brock Purdy. He had a very solid season, but that defense is what carried him, and that defense is what's going to try to carry him again this season. I really do love that hire of DeMeco Ryans in Houston, but let's talk about their offseason additions here. They really just added a lot of depth-like pieces, no real splashes. You can tell that DeMeco is trying to build a culture here. And I like the start. I like Singletary being added as a change of pace back to give Pierce a couple of reps off. I really do like the addition of Dalton Schultz as well. These young QBs, man, they need a safety blanket, and Dalton Schultz will be a really solid safety blanket for their rookie QB. And then defensively, I think the big addition for them, obviously, was Jimmy Ward. He's a Ryans disciple. He has played with DeMeco, a part of DeMeco Ryans' defense the last few seasons over in San Francisco. I think he's being brought over as a tone setter and as a culture builder. As far as losses go for the Houston Texans, the only player that I really consider to be like a key sort of loss is Brandon Cooks, who obviously was traded to the Cowboys. Not jump ship, he was traded. Really, it was a salary dump. They got a 5th and a 6th round pick for him. I like the move for both teams. This is one of those trades where there's no loser. They got rid of a salary they didn't want to pay. Brandon Cooks wanted out, and the Cowboys needed a number 2. But outside of that, really not a lot of losses to talk about. But where there is a lot to talk about is with the NFL draft. Houston, what a draft day move. That was awesome. Thank you so much for keeping us all on our toes. And also, well done to go out and get 2 absolute studs at the top of this draft. I was and I am a huge fan of C.J. Stroud. Everything I've seen, I don't understand why he was being discussed as dropping. Yes, I understand his S2 score was bad. I don't care. On the tape, if you were to grind his tape and watch his tape, you can tell that he can process just fine. He will be just fine. I'm a huge fan of C.J. Stroud, and I think his game is going to translate very nicely. Also, I like the fact that they took him at 2 and took Will Anderson at 3. I like that because if they had taken Will Anderson at 2, the price for pick number 3 just went up. It was really, really smart by Nick Caserio and the Texans front office because The price for a defensive end is a lot less than the price for a franchise quarterback, and maybe someone offers more than Houston for pick number 3 if C.J. Stroud's on the board. Who knows? But at the end of the day, they made the move, and they took C.J. Stroud at 2, and then my boy Will Anderson at pick number 3. I had Will Anderson as the number 1 player overall in the draft, and I think I'm not alone in that. Absolute monster defensive end for Alabama. This guy's been slotted as the best player in this draft class for several seasons now. There's a reason for that. He is unstoppable. I think that they were able to draft cornerstone pieces for both their offense and their defense with their first 2 picks in this draft. And you know that DeMeco Ryans just cannot wait to get his hands on Will Anderson Jr. and start molding him into a Nick Bosa type of defensive end. I also really like that they listened to C.J. Stroud when C.J. Stroud said, I want Tank Dell to be my new wide receiver. I really appreciate that they actually listened to him and went ahead and drafted him. Hey, Green Bay, take notes, idiots. He may be a smaller wide receiver, but the kid can absolutely ball. And I also really like the draft pick of Henry To'o. Alabama middle linebackers, Alabama defensive players just come out of college pro ready. It's just the coaching. It's working with Nick Saban and always, everybody on Alabama is a 4 or 5 star recruit. Like, these guys are the best in high school for a reason. Then they go to Alabama. They get coached up by some of the best coaches in college football. They just come out ready to go. I think he's going to come out ready to go. And he's getting coached by a linebacker in DeMeco Ryan. I will say, if there is a knock on this draft, if there's one thing for me to take away that is a negative from this draft, it's that they had to give up their first round pick next season to move back up for Will Anderson. I don't think there's an edge rusher in next year's class that's as good as Will Anderson. And keep your eyes open for my 2024 way too early mock draft. That will be coming your way shortly. But there's no Will Anderson in this class, in my opinion. But I don't believe the Texans are going to be that good this season, which has nothing to do with their offseason grade. Just overall as a team, there's a ton of holes there. That first round pick could be a top 5 pick, you guys, very, very easily. But if I factor in the trade up, if I factor in the picks that they made, I give this draft an A-. I think it was a really strong draft, and in 5 years we could look at this draft as being the draft that set the Texans on course to be relevant again. Because let's be honest, they just haven't been for several seasons. But that's what I've got for them on the draft, A-. But if I look at everything the Texans have done this offseason, I think it paints a pretty clear picture of a team that's trying to build a culture and an identity. We're at the first year of this. I love the draft that they did. I love Will Anderson. I love C.J. Stroud. I'm a big fan of Tank Dell, and obviously C.J. Stroud is too. I really genuinely believe that they came away with 2 cornerstones for the next 10 years to build around. So I really do like their draft, and I like their offseason as a total. And I want to point this out because I am talking about the Houston Texans, who have struggled and will struggle this season. This is not a roster grade. This is a moves they made this offseason. Do I like them? Do I not like them? And I think that they had a strong offseason and are still a bad team. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can definitely be grouped together, and I am. Because when I put out my roster videos, you'll see I don't love their roster, but I like their offseason. B+ grade for the Houston Texans offseason. As far as what I think kind of a team they are, obviously they're not competing this year, and they probably won't compete next year. There's just too many holes. I hope that they stay true to this and let DeMeco Ryans build the team he wants to build and can build, because the AFC South is going to be tough for years to come. There's 3 rookie quarterbacks in that division from this draft class alone, plus Trevor Lawrence, who is going to be something special, obviously. The guy's he's the prince who was promised. Shout out Nick Wright. But I think that this will be a team that if they buy into what DeMeco Ryans is trying to build, if they buy into this culture shift, and you get the right guys in the locker room, I think that'll pay serious dividends in the future. So, A- draft, B+ offseason. Well done, Houston. You're going to be a team to watch in probably 2 or 3 years, I think. So, thanks, guys, for stopping in for today's episode of 32 NFL offseasons in 32 days, and I will see you all tomorrow.